Now, how many national parks are there right now?
394.
Holy cow.
Yeah, but that includes units. So there's 58 actual national parks. And what most people don't realize is that a lot of places they've been are part of the National Park Service, and so they're managed by. So there's national lake shores, national recreation areas, like Point Reyes National Seashore, Northern California. There's a lot of places, national historic sites, the Statue of Liberty, the Golden Gate Bridge, those all fall under the National Park Service. So most people don't realize that. But the actual parks themselves, the Yellowstones, the Zions, the Yosemites, there's 58 of those.
Oh.
This book actually covers the entire span of the National Park Service. I haven't been to all 58, but I've been to almost all. And I've been to a significant number. I've been to all the major parks, and I've been to all of the major national monuments and national historic sites and places like that. So,
right.
and I've been going to them a long time before I started doing the book and becoming a photographer too. So
Sure.
there's a few I'd like to go back to.
I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, that's good. So I know you've taken a lot of photos at Big Bend National Park out in West Texas, which is dear to our hearts.
Yeah.
And have you ever ventured on to Big Bend Ranch, the state park, which is, you know, a little farther west?
I started a rafting trip, I think, in the state park, and then went down to the edge of the national park. So I'd rafted through it. I forgot about that, actually.
Cool.
And that was really great. And then I stayed on a ranch on another separate trip outside of the area, and it gave me a whole third view of that area. It changes. Around every bend, Big Bend changes.
What else is in the state of Texas in the national park system?
Well, one that I'm heading to is Padre Island National Seashore, and that kind of falls under what I was talking about with the national monuments and the lesser parks that some people like to refer them to, but they're no less spectacular. And I'll be going there in about 2.5 weeks. So that's Padre Island area on the east side of Texas.
Mm-hmm. Aside from the existing national parks, as you were traveling around the country doing the photos for the book, did you come across any particular place that struck you as in danger, or you thought to yourself, wow, this would make a great addition to the national park system? Is there?
I've seen a little bit of both. I've seen places that border a national park, actually in New Mexico, on the edge of Bandelier National Monument. There is a piece of land called the Valles Caldera, which when I went there, I didn't even know, I knew nothing about any of the parks or that land or anything, and I looked at it and it was stunning. It was a caldera just like Yellowstone National Park is, had the big ridge line way in the distance, massive caldera, and it had this beautiful grass valley in it, and streams and rivers, and they have herds of elk, and in New Mexico you get some of the best skies ever, so I had rainbows and storm clouds and just amazing color out there, and interesting formations, almost like little rock islands of pine trees and rocks that kind of come up in the middle of this thing, and I was really struck by it. And then I learned that it was a piece of land that had a lot of management challenges. They weren't really sure how to manage it. You couldn't go on it and hike on it without having permits, and yet it was easier to get a fishing and hunting permit than it was to get a backpacking permit at the time. And so there started to become a lot of interesting conversations about it, and then I realized that it literally shared a border with Bandelier National Monument. I wondered why that wouldn't just become part of that management solution, and there's a lot of conversation that could very well happen now. So that was a very interesting experience to see that trajectory in only 3 years, and it's something that's very much on the radar right now. As far as endangered places, I mean, the parks themselves are incredibly well visited in the summer months. They're packed. I've seen 15-mile backups in Yellowstone National Park for one elk in the shade. Thankfully, I was going the other direction. That's how I knew it was 15 miles. So they're just really crowded. And what's interesting is the visitation keeps going up of national parks, but the boundaries don't really ever expand. There's not enough campgrounds. I mean, I go there and I can't even find a place to put a tent that's a legal place to camp, and that's sometimes really frustrating to me, because it's clear that Americans do enjoy being outdoors. Americans and everybody who visits the parks, which are many times not for international visitors. So I'd like to see more of that, and I think the land takes the beating pretty well, considering how many people visit the parks.